My name is Margaret. I am 32 years old. And right now I'm standing in what used to be my apartment, or rather, the battlefield where I fought and won my freedom. It's a hollow shell stripped bare. The walls echo with a spectral silence, each of my footsteps a lonely drumbeat in the vast emptiness. There's nothing left but ghostly motes of dust dancing in the late afternoon sun, filtering through the naked windows. My phone buzzes, a familiar intrusion. It's them, my parents. They're calling to deliver news that, just 8 months ago, would have shattered me into 1,000 pieces. Today, it merely brings a slow, deliberate smile to my lips. They want me to hand over my keys to my sister, Linda. Not to me. What they don't realize is that I moved out of this place a week ago. And I've been patiently, chillingly, waiting for this exact phone call. Before I tell you how a lifetime of unspoken resentments culminated in this moment, let me ask you, where are you watching from? And if you find a piece of yourself in my story, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't believe the audacity, the sheer entitlement my family thought they could get away with. Let me take you back to where this all began. 8 months ago, the proudest day of my life. I had just bought this apartment, the one now standing empty around me. 12 years. 12 years as a diligent accountant, meticulously saving every single penny, eating ramen noodles, until I practically was a ramen noodle. All for this. Enough for a down payment on a 2-bedroom sanctuary on the 12th floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise. The view was breathtaking. The entire city skyline, a vibrant tapestry by day, and by night, a scattered galaxy of diamonds flung across black velvet. The day I got my keys, I was practically vibrating with excitement. I called my parents immediately, expecting shared joy. My mom sounded happy, yes, but there was a strange, almost imperceptible hesitation in her voice. My dad offered congratulations, but then, a comment that should have been a blaring siren, not just a quiet warning. Well, that's a lot of space for just one person, Margaret. I hope you'll put it to good use. My sister Linda was 28 then, 4 years my junior, but my parents still treated her as if she were 16. While I was clocking 60-hour weeks, fueled by ambition and instant noodles, Linda drifted from one fleeting job to another, barely scraping by in a series of shared, transient apartments. She possessed a disarming charm, a captivating sparkle that would initially draw people in, but it was a shallow well. She never committed to anything long enough to build a foundation, a real life. Our parents had always maintained a stark dichotomy between us. I was the responsible one, the academic achiever, the rule follower, the one who effortlessly met every expectation. Linda, she was the creative spirit, the free soul, the one who needed understanding, who demanded support. In reality, it meant I was held to impossible standards, while Linda was conveniently excused from having any standards at all. When I first moved into my beautiful new apartment, Linda started visiting. At first, it was genuinely lovely. She'd come for dinner, we'd watch movies. For a few fleeting weeks, I dared to hope we might finally forge the sisterly bond I'd always yearned for. She'd glide through the apartment, her fingers trailing over every surface, marveling at its spaciousness, at how incredibly lucky I was to possess such a beautiful place. But then, the subtle shift began. The dishes left in the sink, my expensive shampoo and conditioner mysteriously depleting faster than usual, food vanishing from the refrigerator without a word. Small things, yes, but 1,000 tiny cuts. When I tentatively brought them up, she'd simply laugh, waving away my concerns. "Oh, Margaret, you're so serious. Sisters share everything." The real problem, the full-blown invasion, began 3 months after I moved in. Linda appeared at my door on a Tuesday evening, 2 battered suitcases at her feet, her eyes brimming with theatrical tears. She'd been evicted from her shared apartment, crazy roommates, unreasonable landlord, nowhere else to go. She just needed a place for 2, maybe 3 weeks at most, until she could get back on her feet. Every instinct screamed no. Every rational thought warned me against it. But she was my sister, and she was crying, and I had this beautiful apartment, a spare bedroom, pristine and unused. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. 2 weeks. That's all. 2 weeks bled into a month. A month swelled into 2. Linda didn't just move in, she took over. She rearranged furniture, transforming my living room into her preferred comfort zone. Then came the friends, a rotating cast of strangers, invited over without a single word to me. I'd returned from grueling days at work to find 4 or 5 unfamiliar faces sprawled on my couch, drinking my wine, using my dishes, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. My utility bills soared, skyrocketing to heights I'd never imagined. Linda reveled in long, indulgent showers, left lights blazing all day, cranked the air conditioning to Arctic levels in summer. When I cautiously presented her with the electric bill, suggesting she contribute something towards the exorbitant costs, she looked at me as if I'd asked her to donate a kidney. "Margaret, you make way more money than I do," she'd scoff. "Besides, it's not like these bills are going to break you. You can afford it." That's when a chilling realization hit me. She'd been going through my mail. She knew my exact income because she'd seen my pay stubs. The violation of my privacy, the casual disregard for my personal space, was almost worse than the financial burden itself. But the true breaking point, the moment that ignited a cold fury within me, was discovering she'd had copies of my keys made. I stumbled upon this betrayal purely by accident. I came home early from work one day, the unexpected silence of my apartment shattered by voices within. Using my key, I opened the door expecting Linda. Instead, I found 2 of her friends, Jake and Melissa, casually raiding my refrigerator. They looked startled, caught red-handed. "Oh, hey, Margaret," Jake mumbled, as if it were perfectly normal for them to be in my apartment without either me or Linda present. "Linda said we could hang out here while she was at her job interview." Linda didn't have a job interview. She didn't even have any job prospects. I called her immediately. When confronted about the keys, she didn't even attempt a denial. "I needed a backup plan," she chirped. "What if I lost my key? What if there was an emergency? You're never here anyway." That night, 2 months after her 2-week stay began, we had our first real fight. I told her, firmly, that she needed to find her own place, that 2 months was far too long, and that duplicating my keys and distributing them to strangers was completely unacceptable. Linda cried. Big, dramatic sobs. She accused me of being unreasonable, of abandoning family, claiming she'd do the same for me if our situations were reversed. But even as the words left her lips, we both knew the profound untruth of it. Linda had never been in a position to help anyone, nor had she ever shown the inclination to put herself there. The next morning, at precisely 7 a.m., my phone shrilled. It was my mother. "Margaret and Peterson," she declared, using my full childhood name, the one reserved for dire reprimands. "What is wrong with you? Your sister called me crying last night. She said you're throwing her out on the street." And just like that, Linda had called in her reinforcements. My parents arrived that Saturday morning, descending upon my apartment as if staging an intervention for an addict. Mom, predictably, brought homemade cookies, as if sugar could possibly smooth over the brewing storm. Dad donned his gravest expression, the one reserved for lectures on responsibility and sacred family values. Linda, of course, was already there, playing the role of the perfect, wronged houseguest. She'd been up early, tidying the apartment, brewing coffee, embracing her victimhood. She hugged our parents as if it had been years, not just 2 weeks, since their last visit. "Thank you so much for coming," she murmured, her voice a fragile tremor. I didn't know what else to do. They settled onto my furniture, in my living room, and gazed at me with the fixed, unyielding judgment of a tribunal where the verdict had already been decided. "Linda has explained the situation," Dad began, his voice heavy with disappointment. "And frankly, Margaret, I'm disappointed in your attitude." "My attitude?" I echoed, the words tasting like ash. "Dad, this is my apartment. I bought it. I pay the mortgage. I pay all the bills." "And Linda is your sister," Mom interjected, her voice soft but firm. "Family takes care of family. When I was growing up, your Aunt Susan lived with us for 2 years after her husband died. Nobody complained. Nobody asked for money. We just did what needed to be done. That's completely different." I countered, a spark of defiance igniting. "Linda isn't grieving, or in some kind of emergency. She just doesn't want to pay rent." Linda's eyes filled with fresh tears, perfectly timed. "That's not fair, Margaret. You know I've been looking for work. You know how hard it is out there. I can't help that I don't make as much money as you do." "You don't make any money," I stated, the truth a sharp, undeniable blade. "You haven't had a job in 4 months." "See," Linda sobbed, turning to our parents as if for validation. "This is what I mean. She's so cruel. She throws my unemployment in my face like it's my fault the economy is bad." Dad leaned forward, his gaze sweeping around the room. "Margaret, look around you. This apartment has 2 bedrooms. You're here alone most of the time anyway, working late, traveling for business. Linda needs a stable place to live while she gets back on her feet. What's the harm in letting her stay a little longer?" "The harm," I articulated, each word carefully chosen, "is that she's not trying to get back on her feet. She's getting comfortable. She made copies of my keys without asking. She invites people over whenever she wants. She's not contributing to any of the expenses. This isn't temporary housing, Dad. It's a free ride." Mom reached over, patting Linda's hand with gentle sympathy. "Honey, maybe you could help out a little bit with groceries or something." "I've been buying groceries," Linda chirped quickly, her tears momentarily forgotten. "I bought milk last week. 1 gallon of milk. I bought everything else, including the $300 worth of food her friends had devoured during their impromptu parties." "This isn't about groceries," I said, my voice rising. "This is about boundaries. This is about the fact that I work hard to afford this place, and Linda thinks she's entitled to live here for free just because we're related. Family isn't supposed to charge each other rent." Dad thundered, his voice stern, definitive. "When you were little and you needed help, did we charge you rent? When you needed college money, did we make you sign a contract? That's different, and you know it." I shot back. "You were my parents. You chose to have children. I didn't choose to support a grown adult who won't support herself." The room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Then Mom spoke, her voice softer, but somehow more final, more chilling than Dad's had been. "Margaret, Linda is going to stay here. This apartment is too big for one person anyway. And your sister needs stability right now. You can afford to help her, and you should want to help her. That's what love looks like in a family. And if I say no?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, yet infused with a new, terrifying resolve. Dad and Mom exchanged a look, a conspiratorial glance that sealed my fate. "Then you'll have to decide what's more important to you," Dad said, his eyes drilling into mine. "Your pride or your family." It was a threat, cloaked in the guise of parental concern. And we all knew it. After my parents left that day, their apple pie still sitting untouched on the counter, I retreated to my bedroom. I sat there for hours, staring at the blank wall, the silence outside my door punctuated by the faint sounds of Linda, no doubt calling her friends to gloat about her victory, about how her mean sister had finally been put in her place by reasonable adults. I felt something I'd never felt before toward my family. It wasn't just anger, though there was a blazing fury within me. It wasn't just hurt, though that wound was deep. It was a kind of clear, cold, incandescent understanding. They didn't see me as a person with rights, with boundaries, with a life of my own. They saw me as a resource, a commodity to be managed, exploited, and redirected for Linda's exclusive benefit. That's when I started planning. First, I called a lawyer. I needed to understand my rights as a property owner and Linda's non-existent rights as someone who'd never paid a dime. The news was better than I dared hope. Since Linda had never paid rent and we had no formal agreement, she was legally considered a guest. I could ask her to leave at any time, and if she refused, I could initiate eviction proceedings. But I knew a legal battle would be expensive, ugly, and provide Linda and my parents with ample ammunition to paint me as the villain, using lawyers against my own family. I needed a different approach, a quiet revolution. I started documenting everything. Photos of the messes, receipts for every extra grocery item, every utility spike. I began recording conversations on my phone, legal in Illinois, as long as one party consents, and I was most definitely consenting to recording my own conversations. The most revealing recording came when Linda was talking to her friend Sarah. I was in my bedroom, feigning sleep, but I could hear every word through the thin walls. "The best part is Margaret can't say anything anymore," Linda crowed. "Mom and Dad basically told her she has to let me stay. And honestly, I don't know why she was being such a witch about it anyway. It's not like she can't afford it. You should see her bank statements. She showed you her bank statements? Sarah asked aghast. I accidentally saw them when I was looking for stamps in her desk drawer, Linda lied transparently. She's got like $60,000 just sitting in savings, Sarah. And she was crying about a few hundred in electric bills. So what's your long-term plan? Sarah pressed. I don't know, Linda giggled. Maybe I'll just stay here. She's never going to kick me out now that Mom and Dad are involved. And if she tries to sell the place or move, she'll have to find somewhere that can accommodate both of us. I got it made. That recording was a gift. Linda had just admitted she had no intention of leaving, that she'd violated my privacy by going through my financial information, and that she was essentially planning to steal my apartment by making it impossible for me to live in it without her. The very next morning, I started apartment hunting. Not for Linda. For me. Finding a new apartment while living under the same roof as someone actively trying to usurp your current one is a masterclass in stealth. All my research was done at work. All my phone calls made during lunch breaks. Viewings scheduled for times when Linda would be safely out of the apartment, or at least occupied. My office manager, Janet, a wise woman who had worked with me for 5 years and knew I never asked for special favors, didn't question when I requested flexible time for personal appointments. The apartment I found was smaller, just 1 bedroom, but it was in a quieter neighborhood, and it felt like a place where I could actually breathe, relax, be. The landlord, Mrs. Chun, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, laid out her terms. First month, last month, and deposit up front. References, credit check, proof of income. I had everything she needed within 2 days. The hardest part was moving my belongings without Linda noticing. I started small, a box of books or clothes each morning, carried to my car as I left for work. I told Linda I was donating things to charity, which wasn't entirely untrue, as I was certainly giving myself the charity of getting away from her. I rented a storage unit across town and slowly, methodically, filled it with everything I truly cared about. My grandmother's china, my photo albums, my good jewelry, the artwork I'd collected. Piece by painstaking piece, I was erasing myself from the apartment Linda thought she was inheriting. The furniture was trickier. Most of it I'd bought specifically for the apartment, relatively new. I couldn't simply spirit away a couch or a dining room table without Linda noticing. So, I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to leave it all behind. I called a furniture store and arranged for a completely new bedroom set, bed, dresser, nightstands, a small desk, to be delivered to my new apartment. I ordered a couch and coffee table online. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy. Just clean. Functional. It felt profoundly liberating, this chance to start completely fresh. 3 weeks after I'd started planning, I was ready to execute. I chose a Tuesday for the final move. Linda had mentioned she and her boyfriend, Ryan, were spending the day at Navy Pier, then dinner and a movie. They'd be gone for at least 8 hours. I took the day off work, telling Janet I was dealing with a family situation, which, for once, was technically true. I hired a small moving company for just a few hours. They handled the last of my belongings, my remaining clothes, kitchen equipment, books, anything that was undeniably mine. But before they left, we made a crucial detour to Home Depot. There, I bought new locks for the apartment doors. Installing new locks in an apartment you own is perfectly legal. I wasn't locking Linda out permanently. I was simply changing the security of my own property. I left the old keys, including the copies Linda had made, on the kitchen counter. Next to them, a letter. My final declaration. Linda, I have moved out of the apartment. As the owner, I'm giving you 30 days' notice to find other accommodations. The utility accounts are being transferred out of my name effective Friday. The new locks are for security purposes. You can reach me through Mom and Dad if there are questions about the move-out process. Margaret. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't leave my new phone number. I didn't explain where I was going or why. By 6 p.m. that Tuesday, I was sitting in my new, small apartment, eating Chinese takeout, and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. A profound, unburdened peace. My phone started ringing at 8:30 that evening, just as I was settling in to watch a movie on my laptop. Linda's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again. And again. I listened to the first voicemail. Linda was crying and angry simultaneously, creating a weird, strangled hiccuping sound that might have been funny under different circumstances. Margaret, what the hell is this? Where are you? Where is all your stuff? You can't just move out without telling me. I live here too. Call me back right now. The second voicemail was angrier, less tearful. This is insane, Margaret. You've lost your mind. Mom and Dad are going to freak out when they hear about this. You can't just abandon your apartment. What am I supposed to do? The third voicemail was different. Linda had clearly called our parents because now she sounded more confident, emboldened by coming back up. Okay, I talked to Mom and Dad and they're driving down tomorrow morning. You better be back here to explain yourself because this little tantrum of yours isn't going to work. You can't just run away from your responsibilities. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, Wednesday, I turned my phone back on to find 17 missed calls and 12 voicemails. Most were from Linda, but there were also several from Mom and Dad. I decided to listen to one from each, just to gauge the temperature of the storm. Mom's voicemail was a blend of disappointment and worry. Margaret, honey, Linda called us, and she's very upset. She doesn't understand why you moved out without talking to anyone. Please call us, so we can figure this out together. Dad's voicemail was more direct, laced with his familiar authority. Margaret, this is childish behavior and it stops now. You get back to that apartment and you work this out with your sister like an adult. Running away doesn't solve anything. Linda's most recent voicemail was the most revealing, the most telling of her true character. Margaret, I know you think you're teaching me some kind of lesson, but you're not. Mom and Dad are coming over today, and we're going to figure out how to get you back here. You can't just leave me in an apartment with no furniture and no food and no money for rent. That's abandonment, and it's probably illegal. That last line made me laugh out loud. Linda, who thought she was entitled to live in my apartment for free, now believed I was legally required to furnish it and provide her with food too. I decided to let them have their family meeting without me. I went to work, where I had a wonderfully normal day, reviewing quarterly reports and preparing tax documents. Nobody demanded anything from me that I didn't want to give. Nobody treated me like their personal bank account. Nobody acted like I owed them access to my life simply because we shared DNA. At lunch, I called my lawyer, giving him a heads up that my family might try to involve legal authorities. He laughed, assuring me he'd be ready if needed, but that I shouldn't worry. I hadn't done anything wrong. When I got home to my new apartment that evening, I made dinner, read a book, and had the most relaxing evening I'd had in months. My phone rang periodically, but I developed a new policy. If it wasn't work-related or emergency-related, it could wait. Thursday morning brought a new level of escalation. My phone showed missed calls starting at 6 a.m. But this time, there was also a text from my mother. Margaret, if you don't call us back today, your father and I are going to start calling your work. That crossed a line. Involving my job and family drama was unacceptable. And it told me that Linda and my parents were getting desperate. They'd expected me to cave by now, to come running back, apologetic and compliant. Instead, they were stuck with an empty apartment and a suddenly homeless Linda who had no backup plan because she'd never thought she'd need one. It was time. Time to answer my phone. The call came at exactly 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon. I was at my desk at work when my phone buzzed. Dad's name on the screen. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and answered. Hi, Dad. Margaret. His voice was stern, the same tone he used when I was 16 and missed curfew. We need to talk. Okay, I said, my voice calm. Let's talk. Not on the phone. You need to come to the apartment now. Which apartment? I asked. There was a beat of silence. Your apartment, Margaret. Where your sister is living. That's not my apartment anymore, Dad. I moved out. You can't just move out of your own apartment, he blustered. That's not how this works. Actually, it is how it works, I corrected, a quiet strength in my voice. I own the apartment, which means I can live there or not live there as I choose. I chose not to live there. What about Linda? What about her? Another pause, longer this time. Margaret, your sister needs a place to live. Then she should find one, I said, the words surprising even myself with their detached logic. Just like every other adult in America. She can't afford a place on her own. Then she should get a job that pays enough for her to afford a place. Or she should find roommates. Or she should move back in with you and Mom. Those are all normal solutions that normal people use when they need housing. You're being unreasonable. No, Dad. I'm being rational. For the first time in months, I'm thinking clearly about what's reasonable and what isn't. Your mother and I raised you to care about family. You raised me to take care of Linda. I corrected, the distinction sharp and painful. There's a difference. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Where are you living? I have a place. That's not your concern, Margaret, and don't you take that tone with me. And there it was. The voice that had made me feel small and guilty for 32 years. The voice that told me my feelings didn't matter. My boundaries didn't matter. My life didn't matter as much as keeping peace in the family. But something had changed. Maybe it was sitting in my own apartment, paying my own bills, making my own decisions. Maybe it was the clarity that comes from finally understanding how you've been manipulated. Whatever it was, that voice didn't have power over me anymore. Dad, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'm going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully. I am a 32-year-old woman. I have a college degree and a good job. I pay my own bills, and I make my own decisions. I am not required to provide housing for Linda just because she's my sister. I am not required to subsidize her lifestyle just because she doesn't want to work. And I am not required to sacrifice my own peace of mind and financial stability to make things easier for her. She's family, he spluttered. So am I replied, the retort swift and true. I'm your daughter, too. But for some reason, my needs never seem to matter as much as Linda's wants. Isn't that right? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you asked about my job, or my life, or my plans? When was the last time you treated me like a person instead of like an ATM? Silence. Dad, I left a letter explaining that Linda has 30 days to find other arrangements. The utilities are being switched out of my name on Friday. I've changed the locks for security reasons, but I left her the old keys so she can get her belongings. You changed the locks, he bellowed, disbelief thick in his voice. It's my apartment, Dad. I can change whatever I want. This is unbelievable, he said, his voice dropping to a shocked whisper. Your mother is going to be heartbroken. Mom will be fine, I said, unwavering. And so will Linda, once she realizes that nobody is going to rescue her from the consequences of her own choices. Where is she supposed to go? I don't know, I said honestly. And it's not my problem to solve. How can you be so cold? The question hung in the air for a moment. How could I be so cold? How could I not care that my sister might have to sleep on someone's couch, or move back in with our parents, or actually get a job and find roommates like millions of other adults? I'm not cold, Dad, I said finally. I'm just not responsible for Linda's life anymore. I'm only responsible for my own. We raised you better than this. You raised me to believe that my job was to make everyone else comfortable, even if it made me miserable. But that's not love, Dad. That's just enabling. I want you to come to the apartment tonight, so we can all sit down and work this out. No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no. I'm not coming to the apartment tonight. I'm not going to sit in a room while you and Mom tell me what a terrible daughter I am for refusing to let Linda live off me indefinitely. I'm not going to listen to Linda cry about how unfair life is while she continues to refuse to do anything to improve her situation. Margaret! Dad, I have to go. I'm at work. This conversation isn't over. Yes, it is, I said. It's been over for a while. I just didn't realize it yet. I hung up the phone. For the first time in my adult life, I had hung up on my father. And instead of feeling guilty or scared, I felt a soaring, defiant pride. The next few days were a whirlwind of angry phone calls, guilt-tripping text messages, and increasingly desperate voicemails. I listened to a few of them just to keep track of the situation, but I didn't respond to any. Linda's messages went through several distinct stages. First, pure, unadulterated anger. You can't just abandon your family like this, Margaret. This is insane. Then, a pathetic attempt at bargaining. Okay, maybe we can work out some kind of arrangement. I could pay you a little bit of rent, like $50 a month or something. Finally, manipulation. Mom is crying every night because of what you're doing. Dad says his blood pressure is through the roof. Is this really what you want? My parents' messages followed a similar pattern, but with more emphasis on disappointment and my sacred family obligation. But the most interesting message, the one that truly solidified my resolve, came from Linda on Sunday night, exactly 1 week after I'd moved out. Margaret, I know you're listening to these, so just listen to this one, okay? Ryan and I looked at some apartments today, and they want first month, last month, and a security deposit up front. That's like $3,000 just to move in somewhere. I don't have $3,000. I don't even have $500. I've been applying for jobs, but they all want people with recent experience, and I haven't worked in a while. I'm not asking you to let me live in your apartment forever, okay? I just need more time to save up money and find something I can afford. Linda thought that 6 more months of free housing was a reasonable request. The message continued. I talked to Mom and Dad, and they said they'd be willing to help me with some money if you'd let me stay longer. Like, they could give me money for groceries and stuff, so I wouldn't be such a burden on you. So now, my parents were offering to pay Linda's living expenses so she could continue living in my apartment rent-free. They were willing to spend their money to enable her, but they weren't willing to actually house her themselves. I realized then that this wasn't just about Linda anymore. This was about a family dynamic that had been broken for years, probably decades. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on to sacrifice for everyone else's comfort. Linda was the one who needed taking care of, the one who couldn't be expected to handle adult responsibilities. And my parents were the ones who meticulously maintained this destructive system, constantly asking me to give more, while never asking Linda to do better. That Sunday night, I made a decision that even surprised me with its audacity. I was going to respond, but not in the way any of them expected. I sat down at my kitchen table in my quiet, peaceful apartment, and I wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text message, but an actual, physical letter on paper. I wrote it carefully, editing, and rewriting until I distilled exactly what I needed to say. Then I addressed an envelope to my parents' house and mailed it. The letter would arrive on Tuesday. I figured that would give Linda just enough time to realize that her deadline was approaching and her sister wasn't coming to rescue her. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new life. My new apartment was smaller, yes, but it felt immeasurably bigger because it was entirely mine. I'd bought plants for the windows. I'd hung pictures on the walls. I'd established routines that nobody interrupted. I went to work, came home, made dinner, read books, watched movies, and went to bed when I was tired, instead of when someone else's schedule demanded it. It was a simple life, and it was exactly what I needed. On Monday evening, my phone rang one more time. But this time, it wasn't Linda or my parents. It was my coworker, Janet. Margaret, I hope you don't mind me calling, she said, her voice warm. But I wanted to tell you that whatever you're going through with your family situation, you seem so much more relaxed at work lately. I don't know what changed, but you seem happier. I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. Thanks, Janet. I think I finally figured some things out. Good for you, she said. Sometimes the hardest thing is standing up for yourself, especially with family. She was right. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But it was also, unequivocally, the most important. My letter arrived at my parents' house on Tuesday morning, just as I planned. I knew this because Linda called me at 10 a.m., and for the first time in weeks I answered. Did you really mail a letter to Mom and Dad? She demanded, skipping any greeting. Yes, I did. What did it say? You'll have to ask them, I said, my voice steady. But Linda, while I have you on the phone, I want you to know that your 30 days are up this Friday. That means you need to be out of the apartment by then. Margaret, please, just listen to me for 1 minute. I've been listening to you for months, I said, the well of my patience finally dry. Now it's time for you to listen to me. You need to be out by Friday. If you're not, I'll start legal eviction proceedings on Monday. You can't evict your own sister, she shrieked. I can evict anyone who's living in my property without permission, I corrected, my voice betraying no emotion. And as of Friday, you'll be living there without permission. What am I supposed to do? I don't have anywhere to go. Linda, you're 28 years old. You're not disabled. You're not incapacitated. You're capable of working and finding housing, just like millions of other people do every single day. The only thing stopping you is that you don't want to. That's not true, isn't it? In the 4 months you've been unemployed, how many job applications have you filled out? Silence. How many apartments have you looked at that you could actually afford with a roommate? More silence. How much effort have you put into solving your housing problem versus how much effort you've put into making it my problem? You don't understand how hard it is out there. I understand that it's hard, I said. But hard doesn't mean impossible. It just means you have to actually try. Mom and Dad are furious with you. I'm sure they are. They want to know where you're living. That's between me and them. Margaret, this isn't you. You're not a mean person. You've always been there for family. I've always been there for you. I corrected her, the difference echoing between us. I've always been there for you. Being there for family means caring about each other and supporting each other. What you wanted was for me to be your personal safety net, so you never had to grow up. That's not fair. What's not fair is expecting one person to carry the entire burden of another person's life. What's not fair is taking advantage of someone's generosity until they have nothing left to give. What's not fair is calling someone mean and selfish when they finally set boundaries. Linda was quiet for a long, heavy moment. Then she said, her voice laced with venom, "Fine. But I want you to know that you're destroying this family." "No, Linda," I replied, the words a shield, a promise. "I'm saving myself. If that destroys the family, then the family was already broken." I hung up the phone. That afternoon, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message. "Margaret, I got your letter. Your father and I would like to talk to you in person. Could you please call us back?" Her voice was different. Not angry, not demanding. Tired, perhaps. Sad. That evening, I called them back. "Hi, Mom." "Margaret." She sounded genuinely relieved to hear from me. "Thank you for calling. I got Linda's message that you wanted to talk." "We did. We do. Your letter was eye-opening." I waited, a knot of apprehension in my stomach. "Can you tell us where you're living? We're not going to show up unannounced, I promise. We just want to know that you're safe." I gave them my address and phone number. Then Mom surprised me further. "Would it be okay if your father and I came over on Saturday afternoon? Just us. Linda doesn't know where you live, and we won't tell her unless you say it's okay." "What do you want to talk about?" "Everything," Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. "I think we need to talk about everything." Saturday afternoon, my parents showed up at my new apartment with a store-bought apple pie and nervous expressions. They looked around my small, neat living room and sat down on my second-hand couch, like visitors unsure of their welcome. "This is nice," Mom said, a faint smile touching her lips. "It's very you." "What does that mean?" "Clean. Peaceful. Simple." Dad looked uncomfortable, but he was trying. "Margaret, your letter made some points that we need to discuss." "Okay. You said that we've treated you and Linda differently, and that we've expected too much from you while expecting too little from her. You might be right about that. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from my father." Mom leaned forward. "We didn't realize how much we'd been asking of you, or how little we'd been asking of Linda. We thought we were helping her by being supportive, but maybe we were just making it easier for her to avoid growing up. And we thought we were showing confidence in you by expecting you to handle everything." Dad added, his voice tinged with regret. "But maybe we were just taking advantage of your responsible nature." "Maybe," I prompted gently. Dad sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound. "Probably. Definitely." We talked for 3 hours. We talked about my childhood, about how Linda had always been treated as the one who needed protection, while I was treated as the one who should provide it. We talked about money, about boundaries, about what family obligation actually means versus what it had come to mean in our family. "What's going to happen to Linda?" Mom asked, her gaze worried. "I don't know," I said. "That's up to her. She moved back in with us yesterday," Dad volunteered. "She's sleeping in her old bedroom." "How's that going?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look. "Well," Mom began, "she's not very happy about our rules." "What rules?" "She has to be actively looking for work. She has to contribute to household expenses once she gets a job. She can't have people over without asking. She has to keep her room clean and help with chores. How's she handling that? Like you'd expect, Dad said, a flicker of wry amusement in his eyes. A lot of complaining about how unfair everything is. But, Mom added, a note of hope in her voice, she did have 2 job interviews this week. Really? Really? I think she's starting to realize that nobody else is going to solve her problems for her. It wasn't a perfect conversation, and it didn't fix everything that had been broken in our family for years, but it was a start. For the first time in my adult life, my parents were seeing me as a person with legitimate needs and boundaries, not just as a resource to be managed for everyone else's benefit. When they left that evening, Mom hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "It took courage to do what you did. It took desperation," I said, a small, knowing smile on my face. Sometimes those are the same thing. 3 months later, Linda got a job at a customer service call center. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was full-time with benefits. She found a 2-bedroom apartment that she shared with a co-worker, and she actually paid her portion of the rent and utilities on time. We didn't become best friends overnight. There was still resentment on her part about how everything had ended, and there was still weariness on my part about her tendency to take advantage of generosity. But slowly, carefully, we started building a different kind of relationship. One where we were both adults, with our own lives and responsibilities. My parents and I had weekly phone calls now. Not about crises or problems, just normal check-ins about work and life, and plans for the future. Sometimes they even asked my advice about things, treating me like the competent adult I'd always been, but they'd never quite recognized. As for me, I thrived in my little apartment. I got a promotion at work. I started dating someone I met at a coffee shop near my office. I took a vacation to Ireland that I'd been planning for years, but never quite managed to take because there was always some family crisis that needed my attention. I learned that the people who truly love you won't ask you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. They'll want you to be happy and successful and healthy, even if that means they can't depend on you to solve all their problems. Most importantly, I learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel or selfish. It's necessary. It's how healthy relationships work. It's how families can actually love and support each other instead of just using and enabling each other. The day I moved out of that apartment, everyone expected me to cry, to beg, to give in like I always had before. They expected me to choose keeping the peace over keeping my sanity. Instead, I gave them something they never saw coming. I gave them consequences. I gave them the reality check they'd been avoiding for years. I gave them the chance to grow up and take responsibility for their own lives. And in the end, I gave myself the most important gift of all. I gave myself the freedom to live my own life on my own terms. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes helping someone means refusing to enable them. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop allowing them to treat you badly. I learned all of this the hard way, but I learned it completely. And now, when people try to guilt me into sacrificing my well-being for their convenience, I remember that empty apartment, and how good it felt to walk away from a situation that was destroying me. They expected me to cry. Instead, I chose to fly. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect your decisions? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you handled situations where family expectations conflicted with your personal well-being. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in difficult family situations. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to put their own needs first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your peace of mind is worth protecting, even when it's hard to do. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.